Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Next Year Development Discourse. We're excited to have Waziri Adio with us as our guest for this event. Until recently, he was Executive Secretary of Nigeria Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. Earlier in his very illustrious career, he was an ace journalist with This Day, and recently joined the This Day editorial board. He was an aide to a former Senate president and a policy consultant. He founded a think tank a few years ago and worked with the United Nations Development Program. He's a graduate of UNILAG, Columbia University in New York, and he's also an Edward S. Mason Fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School. He's an Aspen Fellow as well. But in all of this, what I find most remarkable is that he has done what many technocrats who have worked in government fail to do, which is to chronicle his experiences at NAITI in a book. And he's titled the book, The Arc of the Possible, which will form the backdrop of our conversations today. Waziri, you're welcome. So I'll spend about 35 to 40 minutes in a conversation with him, and then we'll open it up for audience participation, and we'll take your comments, questions, and also from the folks who are joining us on Zoom. But to start, Waziri, you situated your management philosophy around the concept of public value as propounded by Professor Mark Moore. Can you, in a few seconds, just explain what it means and how you try to apply it in Nigeria and the difficulties around bringing such a philosophy to work in Nigeria's public service?
Hello. Okay, fantastic. So the concept of public value, briefly, is to look at the contribution that an organization, especially public organization, is making to society. Most people in the public sector just have a job to do. Let's continue to do it. Public value is you need to continuously for the value contributing. What are you doing? What are you contributing to society? How useful is it? What test do you do? It's about being entrepreneurial, not just content with doing the normal routine things that people do. And out of the box, and always thinking about, okay, this is what this organization is meant to do. What else can we do?
How do you sell that in a Nigeria where there's a deficit of trust in government? People do not believe that even the person who's preaching this public value really is interested in driving anybody. How do you get the public service to even key into this concept at all?
Okay, when I got to NAITI, the first thing I told people is that, I will talk a lot about public value, because the reason why we exist is to create value for the public, the equivalent of the value that a shareholder will get from a private company, because we're being sustained by, taxpayers' money and by expectation of what we're supposed to do. So, that we'll continue to see how we can push ourselves. How do we do more? And yes, like you said, there's this deficit, of trust, deficit even of expectation. But the test is in the doing, right? So it's not just about talking. It's also about, so what do you want to do differently? And when you talk about Mark Moore, it's not just about the public value per se. It's also about the way you think about strategy in the public sector. So most people do not think very deeply about this. And what I took away from his concept is that you don't just think about the value that you have to create. You also need to think about the capacity that you have. Do you have the capacity to create that value? So value, why is this valuable? Who is it valuable for? Who is it valuable to? What else can we do? But at the same time, you need to think about, do we have the capacity to deliver this? So it's not just about dreaming for the sake of dreaming. That is one. Two, do you have the authorization and the support to do this? So in the specific instance of NATI, as you know, NATI does audit. When I got there, the audits were not, were behind time. In fact, when we got there in 2016, we launched, in May 2016, we launched the 2013 audit report. So it was late by 3 years. So that is one. So the work was well cut out for us. We need to see, okay, so how can we make these reports more regular and more useful? That is the first thing. The second thing is that what else can we do? If you do an audit report, that gives you a product every year. You can't possibly be busy with just one product, and you can't possibly be talking about one product throughout the year. So what else can we do? So that's why I also introduced that, yes, if you look at some of the constraints that the organization had, apart from the fact that the reports were not coming out regularly, the recommendations of the reports were not being acted upon. So I said, okay, maybe we need to do more in terms of policy analysis and advocacy. So that was why I introduced the policy stream of work.
Correct.
And so basically, it's not just about talking about it, but it's also about doing it and about mobilizing all the resources, the capacity within the organization, the resources and the organization that you need externally, especially from your authorizing environment.
Sure.
And,
so I'll come back to some of the specifics around what you did and some of the innovations you introduced in NATI. But I wanted to spend a bit more time in understanding how you move a public institution to a point where they key into the vision of trying to drive value for the public, right? And in the book, one of the parts I found very interesting was how you struggled with whether to declare your assets, and then you eventually declared your assets. And that helped in making people, at least in corruption, people wouldn't approach you to be corrupt, etc. Were there a few other things you did that helped win the staff over, where they saw that, okay, this is no longer business as usual. We have to drive through and deliver this value, deliver this vision? What are some of the things you did? What are some of the challenges you had in moving a public institution to think more like a private institution?
Okay, the first thing I need to say is that, which I also kept telling people, is that, the world doesn't owe you anything. The way you can justify your existence is by the value you bring on board, and use that value to negotiate for more support. So if you want people to give you financial support, operational support, and all of that, show them that even with the little that we have, we can do this, or we have done this. By the way, if you give us more support, we can do more. So when I got to NATI, I said, we're going to be doing policy dialogues, we're going to be doing policy briefs, we're going to be doing seminars, we're going to be doing occasional paper series. I just rolled out all kinds of things that I said, like you said, you plan to be doing this every week.
Yeah.
So I was like that, I just say, we do a policy brief every week, we do a policy dialogue every quarter, we do a seminar every month. Everybody will say, whoa, slow down. Where's this coming from? And the sense I got was that is the initial gra-gra. You understand? You will calm down, and you will settle into the normal course of things. So it's not just about talking about it, but actually about also doing some of these things. So what I did was I took advantage of some opportunities that presented themselves to provide like a proof of concept. Okay, right? The first support that we got from DFID was to set up, because I went there and they said, what do you want to do differently? I said, I want them to take the organization beyond audit. I want to add policy and advocacy to his work for it to be more effective, for us to have more traction on the recommendations that we're making, right? And they said, okay, we're going to give you somebody to help you set it up. So I took advantage, and one of them is here, Dr. Jide, thank you so much for all the work we were able to do together. So I took advantage of that support to say, don't use this just to set up the unit. Use it to do the work. And let's use that to show people what is possible. So rally around people and started doing stuff. The other thing is to look for opportunities. Let me give you an example, which I mentioned in the book. We had two people that used to attend the Federation, the FAC meeting. And they will go, they will come back, no report, nothing. And at some point I said, do we need two people to be attending these meetings? And what is the point if we don't get any report? So the long short of it is that, the person, I got to know that the person used to file a report and nobody was looking at it. So I called the person and I said, okay, do you have the data for this year? We're like around middle of the year. Do you have the data for this month? Say yes. Do you have the data for the last quarter? I say yes. For the past 2 quarters, I say yes. I said, okay, give me something. So we started looking at that. And on the basis of that, we saw opportunity to say, oh, we can do something with this. So we introduced the NATE quarterly review, where we fact reports and not just analyze it and look at what it means, the trends and all of that. Another thing, opportunity that so it's also about being alive to opportunities and being ready to seize opportunities to show people what is possible.
Being entrepreneurial.
Being entrepreneurial, exactly. So when people see what is possible, they have the option to join the bandwagon because the train is moving. It's either you hop in or you stay out. So there will be challenges, and for God's sake, if there are no challenges, why should there be? Why should you do it in the first instance?
So one of the points that's always raised when you talk about a public service is that the people are not paid well. And once you came in and declared your assets, what you are saying is, I'm not about to steal any money from here. So, people are not going to find opportunities to steal. How did you still motivate native staff to get stuff done? Because the general argument we hear is, if they're not paid well, they're not motivated, they're making money, the salary is an opportunity for you to show up and set your own trap, and make money. Now, if there's no opportunity to set a trap and make money, and are not being paid well, how are they motivated to work?
The first thing I need to say is that I don't think it is fair to assume that every public servant is a thief. Or that the only thing that motivates everybody is money, right? So we need to get that out of the way. The reason why I declared my assets is for signaling. Basically, one, to show that I was ready to walk my talk. I wasn't just talking about all those things, but I also wanted to show that I didn't write about those things in the past. I was ready to put myself out there and show that. Don't also forget that natives are not right. I kept saying that we need to. We cannot be, if you are asking of transparency from others, right? You have to embody it yourself, right? That people who end up in public release in terms of the salaries, right? So, but there's also some people who actually took pay cuts to go and work in the public sector. Some of those people are motivated by other things. It's now left for you to create values they will find valuable. The fact that you can put people to work, see the impact of the work that they are doing, is enough motivation for some people. So I think it's, yes, we need to pay people more, and I would love to talk about that. We need to improve the quality of people in the public service, but we also need to push and challenge people to be the best that they can be. Let me say this very quickly. There was also something that we did, which also came out of entrepreneur and being able to motivate people. There was went to school here, went to school abroad. He's very good with Excel, right? And when he was actually hired. But when he got there, people didn't ask him to do anything about policy. The guy just made himself to whatever was available. One day I was going home, late. So I saw him with some other guy, long and short of it, they were working on something. People used to ask us for information from the audit. And as you know, the audits hard copy and PDF. So if you ask for information on royalties paid by a particular company over different years, so they will open either the hard copy or the PDF for the different years and put it together. So the guy just thought that I can put everything on a spreadsheet. I can even visualize it and see patterns and trends. So he got some of the people around him who were also familiar with Excel to just say, let's put something together. And they were able to do that. So anyway, I got to know about it. See, let's give this guy all the support that he needed. And let's take this beyond Excel. Let's get this to something that can be translated to the web. That anybody sitting anywhere can just go to that portal and do a search and do a query that they want. So it's about being alive to opportunities, about being able to motivate people, about being able to create the environment for people, especially people at the lower level, to thrive and be the best that they can be.
Excellent. So another challenge that most people who move into the public sector face is this dilemma between, do you spend a lot of time and resources building the institution, which takes a lot of effort and you might not see the result anytime soon, or do you focus on getting stuff done? And sometimes it might seem easier to just work with aides or work with consultants to get some results, but we haven't solved the fundamental problem. How did you manage that? Because reading the book, it appeared to me that you focused more on building the institution versus just trying to get stuff out. But I also saw that you delivered a lot of results. So how did you manage that dilemmas, so to speak?
I think you have to strike the balance. You have to aim for it, and you have to use one to drive the other. If you tell people that after 5 years, what I achieved was to build the institution, of course, everybody will laugh at you, right? You have to also, they didn't put you there to build the institution. Otherwise, we'll have been in the Bureau of Public Service Reforms, right? They put you there to deliver results, So what you do, and which I try to do, is to use the process of delivering results, including results that people didn't think about. Like I was saying, in 5 years, we did 32 policy publications, right? Nobody thought about that. And we're also able to clear the backlog of the audits, right? By the time I got there, the audit report that we released took 29 months. The date of publication, right? The period of publication was 29 months. We're able to reduce that. And by the time I left in 2021, the organization in 17 years of existence, published 21 audit reports. Out of that, 13, almost 60% were published under my watch. And it was because I was able to drive people, almost drive them insane sometimes, right? And also based on, you go back to Mark Moore, it's not just about you need to deliver public value. You also have to think about what do we need to do to have the capacity. For example, in terms of the audit reports, we asked ourselves, when were the audit reports late? We found out that we're not starting the procurement on time. We're not supervising the auditors properly, right? The entities giving us information were not attending to us on time. And so many, we also did not have dedicated funding. So the first thing in trying to solve a problem is to understand you need to get your diagnosis right, right? And is when you have done your proper diagnosis that you can find an appropriate prescription that you can use to address the problem. So the point I'm trying to make is that the process of catching up, clearing the audit backlog, and in the process of doing that, it's not just that we're able to reduce the procurement time from 26 months to 8 months, the publication time from 29 months to 15 months, the cost of the audit from 44, we were able to reduce it from 44 to 69%. Right, because we introduced more competition, we started things on time, and we're able to cut a lot of cost and all of that. And also, which was the bread and butter of the organization, but beyond that, we introduced 32 different distinct publications. in the policy arena that didn't exist before. And we had two policy dialogue. So the point I'm trying to make is that it is possible to do things with all the constraints. And we had difficult constraints. Some of them I mentioned in the book. Some of them I was embarrassed that you work for government, that you'll be struggling with issue of rent, that your landlord will lock you out, will put up the lights, and all of that. But despite all of that, and that is what I kept, this is why I keep going back in that book, the arc of the possible. What limits you is your imagination.
Which is where I want to come with the next set of questions, because a whole section of the book talks about getting things done. Yeah. And if there is a challenge we face in Nigeria today, is that we seem just unable to get stuff done. At the federal level, at the state level, at the MDAs, can you articulate for us some of the challenges with getting stuff done in government and how you were able to navigate them, such that, you know, people who are listening, who are looking to get into government from the private sector could arm themselves with a few tools before they get in there?
Okay, the first thing is that which we need to, of course, government capacity is very thin. It's very thin. And this is the engine of government is the civil service, right? They are very diligent, competent, and honest in our civil service, but unfortunately they are in the minority across. And if you have that deficit at the federal level, imagine what you have at the local government level, where the bulk of our people live. If you go to a country like India, right, or Pakistan, both of them, you know, the same country before, you know, and we had the same colonial. So, you know, people usually talk about the UK, right, where you find out that most of the people who end up in the public service are people who went to Oxford and Cambridge, had like first class, right? But leave the UK, leave the US, go to India. Before you can get into the public service of India, there's something.
Or China.
And China. If you pass the promotion exam of public service in India, it's a big deal. I went to school with some people from India and Pakistan, civil servants, regular civil servants. I'd be amazed. So that is something we really need to look at. The second thing is that the people who go from the private sector, the academia, civil society, media, and other places, they also go with the mindset that, yes, we have excelled in this arena. We have some skills, and those skills are transferable. Some of them are, some of them are not. The public service is a different kettle of game entirely. It has its own logic, it has its own pace, and not understanding that will not just limit the scope for what we can do, but also can get into trouble. So if you get, and unfortunately, when people get, somebody is MD of a bank, somebody is editor of a newspaper, somebody used to run a think tank, somebody is a brilliant academic, you know, and they just say, okay, post them to these agencies, right? And we just assume that everything will be okay. We don't prepare people for public service work. As I also mentioned in the book, they just throw you into the organization. It's when you get there that the people you are going to be working with are the ones that will provide some induction for you, right? We look at public service as the idea of public and service is only in
of putting pressure on government. Do you agree with that argument or not?
I agree with the distinguished justice. I also agree with others who believe that the more you do things in the open, the less the possibility of malfeasance.
Mhm.
You know, and this goes back to philosophers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau,
Mhm.
Jeremy Bentham. So
Mhm.
it's an idea that has been around for some time,
Mhm.
that transparency is a viable instrument for good governance,
Mhm.
right? So that argument has not been defeated. What I think we might need to further interrogate is that whether that is enough,
Mhm.
right? My understanding of the theory of change of EITI is that transparency will lead to accountability, and accountability will lead to good governance.
Okay.
It's a neat postulation. The linkages are not necessarily there, and even when they are there, in some places they are broken.
Okay.
The fact that something is in the open, people have the information, does not mean people will use that information to ask questions.
Especially if they're focused on their daily bread.
Apart from that, you're also assuming that they have the capacity
To
one, to
understand it.
understand the information, capacity to ask the
Act
right
on it.
questions,
Mhm.
right? And we're also assuming that if, for example, you know, somebody tells you all the money that has come in, and you are asking, yes, we want to see what you are doing with the money.
Mhm.
We also want to assume that that would necessarily lead to good governance. It's possible for you not to steal money and make wrong-headed decisions.
Correct.
Right? You are accountable. You are transparent. Right? So, but you are making wrong choices. Or maybe even the society also expects you to make wrong choices. Right? So, so that is something that we need to continue to.
Where I'm going.
Hang on 1 second. The first thing is that is Nigeria better off with a NATI? I would say yes.
Okay.
If you look at 2004, when NATI started, and you take it and you freeze it, that moment, about what we know about the extractive sector in 2004, and what we know about our extractive sector now, even with the limitation of knowledge and gaps and advocacy and all of that, I think we are better off. We know much more now. So some of the reforms that have happened in the extractive sector over time, they've also come based on the information that have come into the open, right? The second part is that transparency and accountability via NATI is not enough, because there are some other things that need to happen in terms of overall macroeconomic governance, about industrial policy, about development policy, about monetary policy, and so many other things that are beyond just the information you are publishing about the extractive sector. That is the first one. The second one is that change is not something that happens like this. It builds up, and eventually the time will come. I'll give you 2 examples. When I got to NATI, people used to say, oh, there was this act that should have been amended. And if it had been amended, the country would have made much more money. And everybody kept talking about it, including people in the National Assembly, including people in the executive. And I kept saying, what is this money that doesn't have a name? Right? Why don't we start with, calculating how much it is and using that to now make the argument.
Push the argument.
So one of the things we did in NATI, which is also something that you don't see government agencies doing, is to actually do some financial modeling. This is what you see a lot in the private sector. And we're able to get people trained, we're able to get people to get data and do all of this. So eventually, in March, or March 2nd actually, March 4th. Okay, I'm missing the date now, March 2019. Right? We published this report that showed that the country lost between 17 and $28 billion for not obeying its own laws, right? And we went beyond that. So this is not just speculation now. We say, okay, based on this feed, based on this data, based on this, based on that, based on these terms, if we had changed the terms when we should have done it at so time, this is what the government should have, the country should have gained. We also say, okay, this is what this $28 billion will have done for the country, right? And we sent that report. The other thing is that, like I said, the world doesn't hold you The world doesn't owe you change.
Mhm.
The fact that you are shouting about this does not mean everybody will listen.
Mhm.
You also have to find the ways of engagement. So one of the things that says, instead of publishing a report of 300 pages and expecting that people will act, why don't you pick up issues, pick on particular issues, do a lot of in-depth work on them, examine all the different variables, and make recommendations, actionable recommendations.
Mhm.
Then don't just put the reports there, put it in the media, do the media rounds and all of that, but send these reports to people who are in a position to act, right? And engage with them. So strategic engagement is also very important. So this is also one of the things we need to think about in terms of, anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that in November, the act was amended and was signed by the president. The second thing I want to say is that look at everybody's talking about oil theft. In 2019 again, NATI did a report on oil theft that showed that in 10 years, between 2009 and 2018, the country lost $41.9 billion to theft of crude oil and products, to vandalism, and to deferred production, right? And we circulated everywhere. We did the policy dialogue and all of that. That didn't have as much traction as the other report. But look at it now. Boom, everybody's talking. So the thing is that, change takes some time.
Mm.
But the alternative is not to say, do nothing.
I agree.
What you need to do is to continue to look for different ways of engagement, to make sure that eventually it happens. But I think we are better off with the NATI and other such instruments as a country. We can do much more.
I agree, and if we have time, I'll push it deeper. Yeah. We'll come to the audience as you're getting ready with your question. In the book, you talked about making haste slowly. Yeah. And I think it aligns more with your personality, where you try to work with the stakeholders and try to move them to do things. But I remember many NATI reports that have talked about the need for remediation, the need to install meters at the point where the product flows through. And it's been going on now for years. We haven't done it. The chicks have now finally come home to roost. Don't you think that if NATI had engaged a bit more aggressively, maybe in the type of engagement you get from the NLC, call it rabble-rousing, but it gets the attention of the people who should make this decision. Don't you think that could have helped more than this more sophisticated making haste slowly, carrying people along, making sure that we don't get people angry?
Okay, let's look at it this way. The first thing is that you have to situate yourself properly. NATI is not a labor union. It's not a civil society organization. It's a government agency, right?
It raises another question.
Yeah, it's a government agency, right? It's countries that implement the EITI. So that is the first thing. The second thing is that, so you can't use the approach that the others use. You have to, what is appropriate for them is not necessarily appropriate for you. Because what you are doing, if you are not careful, is you put the organization at risk. The easiest way to undermine an organization is by adopting an inappropriate strategy. All they just need to do is to defund you.
So should NATI be funded by government?
So what you do, well, the very good question. You cannot say NATI should not be funded by government because NATI is a product of an act of the parliament. NATI is implemented by the Nigerian government. So what you want to do to kind of protect yourself, right? I will come back to something else. To protect yourself is to make sure that you have a diversified funding base. That irrespective of what happens, whether they deliberately defund you or you're not getting enough funding, as happened in our case, because of the fortunes of the country, your operation is not stalled. Mm-hmm. The second thing is that, you have to find ways of engagement. And you see, there was a time when NATI actually adopted that approach, which is, let's embarrass them, let's shout to the rooftop and all of that. And you ask yourself, okay, by the time I got to NATI, it had existed for 12 years. And I said, okay, we have done the Aluta part, right? Where did he leave us? Where did he lead us? So let's do something else. And my own considered position was that let's take a different approach that will be driven by evidence and strategic engagement. Let's bring, you see, when people do not listen to you, right? It doesn't mean that they are bad people. It could mean that you are not just cutting through, or there are sort of other things that are engaging their attention. So how do you generate the evidence, and how do you package the evidence, and how do you go across to people? I'm a media person, but in my work in NATI, I wasn't interested in media headlines. Because as important as that is, you're assuming that, okay, because you're on the front page of so, then they are reading you, then they will say, we should act on this. If I can write directly to the president, if I can make a presentation to the National Economic Council, if I can make a presentation to the economic management team, if I can identify allies in government, and push things through them, I stand a better chance. So this is also something that when you work in the public sector, which is also something that I took away from the work of Mark Moore and others, there's something called political management, right? The primary job of of somebody in public office is to manage the politics of the operating environment. So if you miss that, right, you have to be something that we need to bear in mind. You need a lot of tact to succeed. You need to be on that seat to make change happen. If what I wanted to do is, I couldn't be acting like Waziri Adio, the columnist, right? When I was the ES of NATI. Because there are other options available. And it's when you exhaust those options, you also have to have, even as a columnist, even as Aluta people, do you get your way all the time? No. You need to have a realistic sense of how change happens, right? And how to continue to push until you move the needle.
Excellent. Let's go to the audience. I see a hand over there in blue.
Wow. If you have to be gentle, I'm a motherless baby. See my remaining mama there.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is
yourself and then straight to the question.
Thank you. My name is Tunde Salman. Some of us are in distance observers of NAETI and the work we've done when you had the opportunities of working in NAETI. I've not read the book, but I will find time to go through it. I believe the issue is about sustainability now. You have brought in your personal example. There are different thoughts, like working with the grains, reward, result, not the process and co. But now we have a kind of mindset that is deep-rooted, that nothing can work within the system. But we've seen several change agents like you, and it talks about identifying those allies. But given the work you have done in NAETI, what is the prospect or optimism that you have that at least in the next 5-10 years, we've seen a transformed public sector bureaucracy that responds to issues and make things work better? Thank you.
Okay. The man in front of him.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Michael, a freelancer. I want to commend the organizer. And sincerity of your opening of heart is highly commendable. The Lord continue to guide you. I saw your book. It was very simple to read and simple to comprehend. And also look at your biography. You have opportunity of going to one of the best universities. So my question does that. What is the quick win for this oncoming generation? I know that you are very hardworking, workaholic, the way you talk, and you read a lot. So what was the quick win for somebody to emulate you to be on the top? That's first. I also read that you are associated yourself with some friends, Dr. Kayemi, yeah, the present governor. Yeah, what's your relationship with friends and colleagues? Then the third question, what can yes, I'm sorry. I just want to gain from your experience because I also read a lot of your publications in this day, which I was encouraged. Yeah, what plan do you have to mentor people so that they're able to be like you and also to exploit more opportunities? Once again, thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman in front of you, Simon.
Hi, Simon Gusa. I'm an urban planner. I'm an urban planner.
Just
Thank
urban
you.
planner?
Hold on first. So I'm from I'm mixed race. So I'm going to ask a Nigerian question, very respectful, lovely, acknowledging you, and I will ask an Oyinbo question, which is a bit more cheeky. My respectful question is this: first of all, congratulations. You went into this beast of public service. You tried to make sense. You tried to make friends. You speak well of them, which is really excellent. Looking back, because obviously what you did was, it was in stages. It was incremental. Your growth in knowledge, your growth in confidence, your ability to win their confidence. What's your greatest regret? What do you wish you had known earlier, done faster, and that would have changed the outcome? But you were, they say hindsight is 20/20 vision. In hindsight, what would you have done better? That's the nice Nigerian question.
Oh, that's a nice one.
It's gentle. The Oyinbo question is: you're a journalist, you're a PR man, you're an image maker. Were you not taken to Netty to London Image?
Next to you.
Thank you. Sorry, can I?
Hold on.
Okay. Let's take this one and then
Okay.
we'll come.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you're talking about the public value, and part of the main thrust of what you try to do is to ask yourself the question, can this organization not do more? And then you began to expand. And so my question to you is, can this book not do more? And I challenge you to realize that writing this book is not what you owe Nigerians. This book represents a manual for any intelligent person who wants to get into public office, deliver value, and come out. So I can assure you that what I see is a series of lecture circuits and roundtables and trainings for newly elected people at the national and state levels on how to navigate the dangerous forest called Nigeria. And very quickly, having worked with series 3 reform-minded ministers, just share 1 minute to share some distance. In information, I was SA and chief of staff. The minister said, no, this place needs to change. Its primary business is communication. So it ought to be populated heavily by professional information officers. Process. We sought permission from the president. He cleared it. I then told the minister there's the service-wide rules circular, which allows people, if you can be a graduate of history and you're put to be head of engineering. We didn't do anything about that circular because we couldn't. And in any case, the first batch of postings, 25 people, 20 came from civil service. Another 5 came with exactly the same letter, not from the civil service, because there's a syndicate marketing the letter. Yeah. The other thing, headships. Video Censors Board, Film Corporation, Voice of Nigeria, FRC, and Emeka said only professionals ought to head these organizations. Then we obtained permission again from the president. And out of the blues, out of the box, those positions were advertised, were interviewed. That's how Emeka was working in multi-choice. His letter of appointment was ready. He came. And when I sat him down, I said, listen, when people come to tell you how they got this job for you, it's a lie. We had hunted you and we're not going to send anybody to you for contract. Then the movie Nollywood was also under the ministry. And so all that. But the final thing is, when we wanted to do a comprehensive staff audit of the ministry, because the only ministry that has officers in every local government, information officers, the usual thing, you want results, so you write a memo. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5, 6 weeks. The memo was still moving up and down. What was it? The PAMSEC is not on the list. There's DTA. There are all kinds of things. So it struck me. So I went, I said, look, some of us who come from outside can be quite silly. The administrative head of this place is the permanent secretary. And look at me pushing him up and down without even including, he ought to be the one leading the 6 teams. He said, you see that we keep telling you people. That audit took place. Of course, somebody was heading the 6 teams simultaneously, even though he was sitting in his office. I got entitlements connected with it. But from there, we found out that instead of 4,000 and something staff, we had 300 and something across the country. And we found out that most of the directors, not less than 68%, should not have been promoted above level 6. And it was top heavy on non-professionals. It's uniform for all the ministries. So please, this is not a book. This is a national service that later in life you realize you did for this country. Reformers, I'm glad you understood it. That air of, I've come here, the template is in my computer. The real world is not in a computer. There are interests that need to be in place. And people like you must be prevented from functioning because you're setting a bad example. If you like the small cream that can make change, they need to be schooled in this. So better start preparing your lesson notes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I will attempt to answer the questions in the order in which they were asked. The first question about, thank you everyone for the very nice things that you've said about me and the book. On sustainability, I have 2 answers to that. The first one is, which is also what I try to do with the book and what I try to do with my time in Haiti, to show that it's possible to get things done, right? And to get things done by also without losing who you are, right? So there are 2 parts to that. The one about getting things done, yes, there's a template for everybody to see. The one about values, each person will need to decide what their values are, right? So, but the fact that you have shown that it's possible, that it is possible, is also an opportunity for others to say, okay, if this is how you went about it, I might not need to go about it the same exact way, but there's, it shows that I can get things done, right? So that is that. The second thing is that why it is possible for different individuals to lead by example and show what is possible. We need more than individual examples, right? You need a system-wide reform in so many areas. If somebody chooses into an organization and does styling work and they go, you don't have control over what comes after. Even if that is sustained, this is 1 out of about 1,000 government agencies. That's at the federal level. So what you need to get this really sustained is you need somebody at the very top to see this as a major issue and to champion it. We need to reform our civil service. We need to reform the way our conception of power. We need to reform so many things. So people stand a better chance of succeeding, and their success also stands a better chance of being sustained when the environment is yeah. So like I said in the book, why individual example is key. The environment is king. If you leave that unchanged, people are just, fluffing about. Quick wins, mentoring, relationship with people, so many questions there. You see, what I would say to younger people is, try to be yourself and try to equip yourself, try to empower yourself. If what you want to do is to work in the public sector, right? You want to head a particular agency, you might be lucky that somebody that will mention your name, or somebody that will appoint you. But are you ready? So prepare yourself. Invest in yourself. And, another thing also along that line is that, which also ties to the question that I mentioned before, is that, in most countries that have made progress, people go to public service to serve their country, not to serve themselves. So maybe it's not for everybody. If what you want to do is to make money and make money legitimately, and there's a lot you can do to make money legitimately, right? Maybe public service is not the place you want to go. Of course, as a country, we also need to expand opportunities for people to be able to be the best that they can be, so that everybody is not struggling to get into government and for the purpose of just making it as a path to progress. Greatest regrets. That's not so nice, but I will try to answer. I try to be honest with myself. There are many things I could have done differently, and I also acknowledge that in the book. I think hindsight is always 2020. One of the things when I look back is that I could have had more patience with people. I could have been also less self-righteous, right? And I could have framed some of the things that are important to me, not as personal issues, but as things that are important for the organization. Let me give you an example. If you read the book, I spent a lot of time consulting with stakeholders, onboarding the board, even having my own personal board, right? It would have been better for me if I had started, even after doing all of that, before we start rolling out, if I had a retreat with the staff, right? To just say, you know what? We need to do things differently. I need you. Not the attitude of, if you like, jump on board. If you like, stay where you are. I can do it. Right? And it's not about, okay, this is me. No, it's about frame it in terms of, framing is very important. You are honest people. You want to earn honest means, and you want to go home satisfied that you are putting honest work. I want to create opportunity for you to do that, including opportunity for you to be able to improve yourself so that you might be able to access better opportunities in life. If I'd done that, maybe some of the things like, trying to do a gift policy, and all those things, maybe you have been different. Maybe also some of the pushbacks that I had, maybe is hypothetical, but that's something that I could have done. I could have done differently. Launder image, of course not. By the way, I used to work in AT. I was there as director of communication before I went to do my master's in public admin at Harvard. Then started running my own business, and all of that. Then I was tapped 8 years later to be the executive secretary. If you wanted somebody to learn that image, Waziri Adio is not a good candidate. You are better off with somebody else. So it's I don't think that was, if they had thought about that, they wouldn't have given me the chance. If they had thought about, but the thing is, I also moved, even as a journalist, I moved from just being antagonistic. This is also part of my own journey as an individual. Just complaining about problems to, how do we solve problems? Everybody can complain, or everybody can criticize. Everybody can attack. The real work is bringing about change. It's about providing solutions. And that's also one of the things I try to do in NATI, to say, how do you become a solution center? How do you multiply options for government? You are looking for money, we can provide money for you. You want to do reform, we can provide options for you. You are looking for how to better utilize resources. So it's about that. It's about, trying to just move in a different direction. Dr. Okay, thank you so much. By the way, you did the review of the book when we did the presentation. It was a master class, and I said, as always, maybe while I was wasting my time trying to get into a mass comm program, maybe I should have gone to study philosophy, and maybe I would have been able to do reviews like that. But yes, why did I write this book? And basically, it's not just to talk about, okay, look at me, look at what all the fantastic things I've done. No, it's to show what is possible, not just in terms of what you can do, but also in terms of values. We don't talk about values enough in our country, right? How can you live by your values, especially in the public sector, with all the temptations, with all the pressures, with all those things, right? Then when we ask people to come, we say professionals, academics, and others, people who mean well, come and be part of the solution, right? How do we ensure that we increase their chance of success? And how do we ensure that they don't get into trouble? The more those professionals, those technocrats, those people who mean well, those people with good reputation, the more they get into trouble, the less of those people you'll be able to attract, and the worse the system will be. So we also need to prepare people, including letting them know that this is a landmine. You understand? This is a landmine invested area. So how do you tiptoe your way out of the landmine and still get things done? So will it be something that will be done by just a book? Of course not. So definitely, yes, I'm already thinking along the lines that you suggested, and I'll also consult you. I will tap you and see how. So what I try to do, which if you have read the book carefully, I tried not to write a controversial book. I tried to write a book that people can learn from. And the book was released in December. I've not seen anybody up to now to say, I know that thing that I said is not. Because, anytime there's a controversy, it might be good for publicity for the book. Mr. Yade, maybe people will be rushing you and say, where's this book? We want to read it. But it takes away from the message. I want a book that people can read and say, we can learn from this. We can learn about how to do things better. We can learn about ourselves better. We can learn about how to run our society better. And, we need to take that further afield into writing manuals, into, having discussions with people, to the nuts and bolts of getting things done that we can't get into itself. Yeah.
So here's the thing. We have a bit of a problem. We always try to start on time, and we always try to end
on time.
So we've gone past our advertised closing time by 5 minutes. So I want to officially end the program, especially for the people who are watching on Zoom. But I see that there are more questions in here. And if you now choose that you want to stay and continue, we have ended the session, but we can still take questions. Yeah. So I see a few hands. I see a hand here, there. I see like 5.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's get the microphone here. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for your book. My question is, Waziri Adio wasn't formed at NAITI when you became the executive secretary. You were not formed at NAITI. Yeah. Your principles, the values you brought to the executive secretary position only offered you a platform to express yourself and to show Nigeria what those values were. I would like you to talk a bit more about the formative years that made you the sort of person you are, and the principles and the values that helped you survive that platform, because that is what I think that has been missing in this entire conversation. There are traits you see in somebody and you say, listen, a public sector is for you or public sector is not for you. I would like you to dwell a bit more on on the pre-years. Thank you.
Can we?
Thank you, sir. My name is Eric. During your presentation, sir, you said 21 audit reports were published under your watch.
In 17 years of
the existence of the organization. Okay. What was your motivation? Can that be attributed to your background as somebody from journalism or as a policy maker?
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Jesse, and I want to thank you, Pat, for this invite. Let me take it from the point you mentioned, which is in other climes that have evolved to have developed. Public service is actually public service and not self-service, as it were, in this country. And in those climes, what holds sway, or what is core, it's the issue of what I call core values, be the national core values you want to call them, which is what is driving their perspective and commitment to the kind of work they found themselves. Now, NAITI is not in isolation of the general Nigerian context of an environment. And we have a big problem in this country with national core values. I don't know whether we have those or not. What do you think, or how are you able to navigate, this general problem that NAITI is just a subset of the bigger problem, and then to have delivered? How do we cascade that, down to the general, Nigerian context? And from what the big brother here talked about when he was in Ministry of Information, my little worry is this, that this very wonderful, great people, brilliant people who are coming from the public sector, from the private sector, we only bring them into the public sector for a while, and then they go back, and then the whole thing goes back to the same old story again. Sure. Why am I saying this? It's because of the book I read, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala's book on fighting corruption. Reading that book opened my eyes to a whole lot of things. How are we able to take this thing beyond this moment? And thank you, Pat, because one of the solutions, I think, is this discourse that you're always calling us to continue to talk, continue to discuss these issues, in the course of which solutions, ideas will be coming up to address the problem in general terms. Thank you.
Thank you very much.